listeners, or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Mackey's Shiny Side Up. This is show number 491, 190 and 400. Please do donate if you can. It is, right? 190 and 400. That's 9 shows away from the Big 500. Big 500. That's 500. It's half a thousand. That's a quarter of 2,000. Not that it matters. But if you can donate, please do. This is Listen of 100 Radio, meaning, well, you know, there's no corporate sponsor here, not even a non-corporate sponsor. It's really just, a collection. Or even, let's call it a collective, really. A collective of similar-minded, I don't want to say like-minded, but similar-minded people that want to push forward their research, their truth, want to make people understand, know about things. And they don't always overlap, they don't always agree, and neither should they. And I need to say this here, and this is really, really important because it's something we have forgotten over these, well, past few years, I guess. Simply because I disagree with you does not mean I hate you, right? Mm-hmm. Discourse is what drives the conversation forward. If we are in agreement, we will never talk about anything ever again because it's all there. It's like what this is really interesting. It's what they said during the Inquisition as well. They not just the Inquisition, but they went to South America especially, and they found all these books written by the Maya, and they go, okay, well, either these books agree with the Bible, in which case they are not necessary and the Bible is sufficient, or they don't, in which case they're heretic and should be burned. So in either event, we're going to burn the books. Thank you very much. And so disagreement and discussion and I guess what you would call the synthesis of opinion and fact into hopefully a coherent whole is what drives or should drive science. It should drive our society, but doesn't always do so. Hey, Maced. 139. Thank you for that little Hopi Indian chief link she put. I want to say he or she. I don't know actually. Maced. Sorry, I do apologize. But Mace 139 put a great link into the chat. If you want to be part of the chat, well, just go to the website and enter. It's really easy. This is the easiest chat that Revolution Radio has ever had. It is really, really easy to use. There's nothing you have to worry about at all. Now. So it is important that you support our radio station. It's all ours, right? All the hosts, the tireless producers and staff, admin, etc. in the background, keeping the servers running, making sure that there's actually a program, a schedule that is adhered to. Obviously there are things that can't be said or done because it falls under broadcasting regulations. Mm-hmm. This station, just like any other radio station. So no, you cannot say whatever you want, and you certainly can't use profanities, right? So just to be clear. But ultimately...
there is no sponsor.
No. So we can say whatever we like from a content and context point of view, okay? So no one will pay us to push their product or push their opinion. What Dave and I give you here is pretty much unadulterated opinions of both Dave and Mackie. Now, which brings us to today's show. And we started a show cycle a couple of weeks ago. Now it's the rational approach to the UFO question. Now the funny thing is this. I think it's funny because we have had disclosure. Make no mistake about it. Disclosure has happened. That ship has sailed. The bus is gone. If you're not on it, that's too bad for you. But we have had disclosure. What does that mean? We have seen the admission that the UFO phenomenon is real. We're not saying that the extra terrestrial spacecraft. We're not saying they're time machines. We're not saying they're interdimensional, travel bubbles. None of that. But the phenomenon is real. It's a real phenomenon, and they don't know what it is. And now, but they can't call it UFO anymore, Dave.
Yeah, that's right. For some reason,
they have to call it UAP, and UAP. Which means it's another acronym. So instead of unidentified flying objects, and this is like the UFO acronym has become synonymous with alien spacecraft. Let's face it, it really has, right? I mean, when you say UFO, immediately you think, oh, clearly it's an alien spacecraft. Well, it never
meant that.
No, never, ever. But that's the association, so I get it, right? So what they've done now, they're calling it unidentified aerial phenomena. Now, interestingly enough, a UFO, the very term would conjure up the image of an intelligence that is piloting it. I mean, that's certainly an flying object. You think, okay, that's piloted by someone, right? Whereas an unidentified aerial phenomenon could be ball lightning, right? It could be a cloud, but it doesn't have that association of an intelligence driving it necessarily, right? And I think that's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to yeah, I know. Sorry, Dave just said Europe used to mean an unacknowledged program. Well, it sort of is, right?
That's true.
Right?
It's quite broad, that definition.
It is. So that's where we are. So disclosure is something that has happened. Now, not full disclosure as to what the phenomenon is. No, but the existence of the phenomenon can no longer be debunked by anyone. You can no longer say, oh, it's swamp gas, Venus, low-flying geese, weather balloons.
Temperature inversion.
Temperature, I love that. Or a low-hanging moon. And no, none of that. It is a thing that we don't know what it is. That's what it is. We don't know what it is, right? So it's really interesting that...
But to come from the people who have the highest flight tech on the planet to suggest that they don't know what it is, I think that has one of the weightiest responsibilities from their perspective to say we actually don't know. Yeah, it's been here for heaps, probably 80 years, 100 years, 300 years, for however long it's been here. We're at a point where it's still beyond us. So
we've got biblical references to UAPs.
That's
we
right.
have. I mean, so we're talking thousands and thousands. I mean, in fact, all of our recorded history has references to these phenomena. Now, I said this before, and I will say it again. There's this an excellent television program out now. It's broadcast on the History Channel, which is called The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch. And I now was going on about season 1. I've just completed watching season 2, and season 3 is being shot right now. So they only have the summer, because it's in northern Utah. And northern Utah winters aren't very hospitable. So they only have the summer, really, for the 3-4 months to shoot their season. And that's what they've done in season 1. That's what done in season 2. So I suspect season 3 will be airing in April, May, June, sometime like that, whenever post-production is finished next year. I do want to share a few things before I go into our prepared text of the Skinwalker Ranch this season. So if you haven't, it's not going to really be a spoiler because you have to watch it for yourself to really appreciate it. But I will tell you some of the things that they have uncovered. So first of all, Ed Bigelow, space pioneer. I guess he's a aircraft billionaire. He's a massive. He used to own the Skinwalker Ranch after the Shermans. So he bought it from the Shermans in 1996. And in 2016, he sold it to the current owner, who is sponsoring the show. In fact, okay, so it's a real estate developer in Utah, and I think he's a Mormon as well. But religion doesn't really enter into any of these researches, even though it does touch on certainly the validity of many belief systems. So for 20 years, Ed Bigelow had a team of research scientists on the ranch. 20 years, and he hasn't disclosed very many of his findings. There's still so his map was called I think NDIS or NIDS, and they haven't made known their research findings at large. They haven't. Interestingly enough, Dr. Taylor, there's a guy called Dr. Taylor. He's also the guy that analyzed the Tic Tac video for the Navy, and he has been a consulting expert on the secret of Oak Island, believe it or not. And he brought a lot of the Masonic as above, so below kind of, I guess, clue-finding, puzzle-solving things to that show. You know, if you know about Oak Island is a place where many believe the Templars might have buried some of their treasure or some of their lost artifacts. Okay, anyway, but he's there as well, interestingly enough. So Dr. Taylor, very interesting. He's an astrophysicist. He's a really clever guy, and there's a lot of other clever guys on the show. And there's the people that have practical experience. There's ex Marines, other security on that, for example, on the ranch. So you've got some serious and hardened individuals. These are people that know what they're doing. They know their stuff. So that's why I like the show. It's not fluff. And they're coming across these amazing phenomena, and they actually managed to simulate it. And you love this, Dave. They brought in Tesla coils to send electricity into the ground because they found that the ground conducts electricity. So they stuck a car battery into the ground, and they connected wires coming out of the ground to a flashlight, and the flashlight lit up. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then they did an analysis of the soil, and the soil on Skinwalker Ranch essentially contained all the elements and minerals that you need in modern day electronics. All of them, right? So the soil is highly conductive. It creates very strange magnetic phenomena, and they stimulated it to the point where they had UAPs, as they're called now, appear in the sky, almost as though you were flicking a switch. Okay, it is fascinating. And now for the next season, the Dr. Taylor, obviously being well connected in the scientific community, it seems, has friends that have control satellites, and some of these satellites have ground penetrating radar. So he's going to get those people to scan the Skinwalker Ranch. So far, I mean, they've used LiDAR, used ground penetrating radar, they've started digging and drilling. There's a massive waterway under there as well. It's just a very, very strange place. They even brought a rabbi in, believe it or not. They brought a rabbi in that created a safe space, like a holy space. And when that happened, they witnessed inexplicable temperature variations in one of the homesteads. It's just the temperature dropped like 30 degrees, just like that, bang. You know, as soon as the rabbi started his chant. So again, I strongly urge you to consume this particular show. Go there if you can in the States. If I was in the States, I would be there tomorrow. I mean, you probably wouldn't be allowed on the ranch because it's all locked up and it is under security. But it is, I would be near there. I would move to a town near there because something monumental is going to happen there. And they also pinpointed I guess the source of the power fluctuations of disturbances to about a mile up in the sky rather than underground. So there's underground phenomena, but there seems to be something about 1.6 kilometers up in the sky. And they shot rockets up, and when they were shooting these rockets up, these are massive rockets, by the way. Again, these UAPs appeared. So this is the latest on the Skinwalker Ranch, a mystery that's been with us for at least 100 years. It drove away the original inhabitants. It drove away the Shermans, right? And cattle mutilation is the thing. Oh, there's a cow carcass. This is interesting. The cow died in season 1. It died. Okay, like it was called. They diagnosed it as pneumonia, right? But it was stress-induced pneumonia that killed it. And all the other cows ran away from it. They saw a UFO on top of the cow just before it died as well, like in the sky, right? Now, so what they did, they put the carcass out to the side of the field. It's a fairly large ranch, right? So they tore it out there and they left it. They left the carcass of the cow. And you know what happened? Not a single predator disturbed the carcass for a year. For a year. Wow, you put any out near it. No. And so they did an analysis. Maybe it was toxic, maybe it was radioactive, so they did the full analysis of the cow carcass, even down to spectroscopic and isotopic analysis in labs. Nothing wrong with it. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it. And yet, not a single scavenger or predator disturbed this carcass. It's completely inexplicable. Like, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. You put anything out there within a day, it'll be gone, like the bones will be scattered and will be eaten up, right? Because that's just what happens in nature, not even insects. apparently on
Yeah,
that thing.
that's crazy. There must have been something.
Well, yeah, 100%. We just don't know what. So this is really, it's an ongoing mystery, which I find fascinating. It's the first time that the material has been made available to that extent on the Skinwalker Ranch, and they're talking about two eyewitnesses. They're talking to ex-inhabitants of the ranch. There's a lot of information and material. I strongly recommend watching The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. It is really, 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 really fascinating. Now, interestingly enough, it all lines up with what we think, which is really interesting, right? So clearly something is happening here. It's a phenomenon that can't be explained. It seems to be underground. It seems to be above ground. It seems to be able to come and go at will, as well. It seems to be, and this is something for you, Dave. There seems to be portals that are opening up. They interviewed one of the members of Ed Bigelow's team, a retired Army colonel. I think Colonel Johnson. I can't remember his name. And he believed so they asked him point blank, well, what do you think it is? It was over Zoom, right, last year. And he said, well, I think it's a portal. I think it's a portal. And the ancient, the Ute Indians also believed that it might have been a portal. And certainly the Skinwalker would come and go. And they seem to have drawn portals in petroglyphs onto the rocks there, like the symbol for portals, right? Plus star constellations, both. Was it the Great Bear, as well as what's the Dracos? I think Draco, the snake. Anyway, the point is that a portal. This could be a portal. That seems, and it's also the eyewitness account of several other people that have seen the portal open in the sky. The portal would open in the sky and something would come out of it, like a flying ball sometimes, or like a tic-tac shaped object, etc., etc. So this is really fascinating. Now what they also believe is that the ground in Skinwalker Ranch could hold a lot of energy. It could potentially be used to store energy because they have got these massive magnetic fields they can't explain. So why would there be these massive magnetic fields and the associated electromagnetic radiation? And one of the explanations is that it's just a gigantic accumulator. It's just like a gigantic battery, if you will. If I was an advanced civilization and I could, build, I guess, or make Earth that can hold power indefinitely, for argument's sake, maybe with the help of water, and there's a massive water course there as well, then that's what I would do. I would go and fill up my energy stores, which we have seen as well. We've seen UFOs or UAPs near lakes and the other sites, and maybe it was to take on water, and maybe it was to charge up the batteries or whatever.
The Gosford glyphs. The Gosford. What was it called? The Gosford sighting.
Mm-hmm.
It hovered over the saltwater lake and sucked up water, says everybody looking at it.
Right. So this is not an isolated incident. You have this across the world, in the Caribbean Sea a lot, and near the Bimini blocks in the Bahamas, in the Great Lakes around the world. You've got these stories as well that these UFOs somehow come and suck up the water or something, right? Or even dive into the water, and then they become underwater or submerged objects. Objects, right? So it's a fascinating thing. So here's the theory that we're going to put forward. So we I think we've shown to some extent, at least, that it's highly unlikely that the seeding event notwithstanding or colonization notwithstanding, that humanoid species would develop elsewhere independently of us. So if we say that life started here on Earth and it went a certain way, it would be extremely unlikely that it would happen the same way elsewhere on other planets. Is it possible? Sure, but it is highly, highly unlikely. And again, unless, of course, there was some kind of colonization or seeding events, etc., which is a whole different tangent. Now, therefore, we must assume that either there was a seeding event or there was colonization, or, and these are actually and ors. These are not just ors, but this is and or, and or, and or, and it might be and, right? They're here. They have been here all along. And the fact that they're not actually someone else, they're us. Or they're just as much native to this planet as we are, maybe more so. So this is the theory then, right? The Earth as we know it is populated on the surface. Naturally, many creatures and plants live below in the oceans and in the bowels of the Earth. What if we humans that live on the surface are but third world nation players in comparison to the civilizations that dwell under the ocean or within the Earth? The surface, in other words, is the true developing world. On the surface, we're exposed to radiation, harsh climates, and unforgiving geographies, potential meteoric impacts, and all manner of natural catastrophes, much more so than we would be underground, right? And then certainly very obvious now with all the rain and fires that's happening, the flooding, etc. Right? I mean, I think that's clear, right? Now, below the surface, in vast chambers, some natural, some purpose-built, most of the environment and living conditions would be controlled. Technology would have to be fairly advanced to ensure life can thrive underground. One thing, though, is clear. The civilization or civilizations that may exist below are static. We've discussed this. The phenomena, activities, and stories that have come to us through the millennia have not changed. The same kind of objects, flying discs, shields, chariots, have haunted our skies for thousands of years. There seems to be very little or no progress for those that pilot those craft. That kind of apparent stagnation makes sense for civilizations that are not only very old, but also populated by individual beings that are extremely long-lived. Once again, many stories, legend, and myths from many cultures tell us that the gods, in inverted commas, lived for tens of thousands of years, created us, ruled over us, and also decided our fate. And here we have an aside, Dave. I don't know if you want to share this quick aside. This is a Sumerian king list to support our previous statement.
Yeah, so this is lines 1 to 39 before the flood. This section, which is not present in every copy of the text, opens with the line, "After the kingship descended from heaven." The kingship was in Eridu. 2 kings of Eridu are mentioned before the city fell and the kingship was taken to Bad Tibera. This pattern of cities receiving kingship and then falling or being defeated, only to be succeeded by the next, is present throughout the entire text, often in the exact same words. This first section lists 8 kings who ruled over 5 cities. Apart from Eridu and Bad Tibiru, these also included Larag, Zimbir, and Shurupag. The duration of each reign is also given. In this first section, the reigns vary between 43,200 and 28,800 years for a total of 241,200 years. The section ends with the line, "Then the flood swept over." Among the kings mentioned in this section is the ancient Mesopotamian god Demuzid, the latter Dumuz or Tammuz.
That's right. Now, so this is coming from one of the oldest texts that we still have in cuneiform writing, right? The Sumerian king list. Again, there are various king lists and various texts, but this one is one of the oldest. Now, for beings like that, time moves at a different pace to us. If you expanded the lifespan of a human being to hundreds of thousands of years, the rapid technological progress that we are used to might not make sense, or may in fact be counter to the nature of a potentially galaxy-spanning civilization. As you travel great distances, even at faster than light speeds, and we may even be talking about intergalactic voyages here, so between galaxies, a relatively static, stable civilization is what you would want in order to avoid confusion and culture shock for returning travelers. A simple example might illustrate the point. As we might leave our home for a week-long summer holiday, we clean up, lock up our house, and travel to our holiday destination. The bacteria that live on the countertop of our kitchen start to colonize a few pieces of cheese and bread we might have inadvertently left behind. Thousands of generations of bacteria and fungi will wage war over these crumbs and might eventually settle into a relatively stable arrangement. All we see when we return is bits of mold and fungus, never knowing the epic struggle we see before us as we wipe up the mess with our kitchen sponge. In the ages that have passed for the bacteria, molds, and assorted critters, our house, our street, our garden, in short, our home didn't, in all probability, change at all, which of course is exactly the way we like things to be. If we consider the possibility that we are indeed sharing this planet with a much older civilization or civilizations, a lot of strange events and activities would start to make sense. The obvious anthropomorphic problem with the alleged IT. So they look like us. They're bisymmetrical. They've got legs, arms, faces, eyes, ears, noses. Constant sightings of USOs. These are unidentified submerged objects. Highly advanced tech effects. The Skinwalker Ranch, Bigfoot, USO encounters, disappearances in national parks. Stories on inner Earth societies, civilizations, and cities. Mutilations, abductions, and seductions. Checking maybe on genetic experiments. Checking on introduced livestock. Do crop circles maybe fall into the same category? Why would not non-terrestrial races give a thought to cows or crops for that matter? Why would they even bother? It would make sense if we are talking about a checkup on introduced species after the Great Catastrophe or a similar event. The parts taken, and most gender mutilations are surgical in their precision, may be used for medical, cloning, or other unfathomable purposes. Which brings us to the advantages of underground living, my friend.
Isaac Asimov, June 2nd, 1989. The thought of living underground, of burrowing in the earth like moles, of separating oneself from the air and sky may seem unpalatable. But if we stop to think of it, there can be many advantages to living underground. First, weather would no longer be important, since it is primarily a phenomenon of the atmosphere. Rain, snow, sleet, fog would not trouble the underground world. Even temperature variations are limited to the open surface and would not exist underground. Whether day or night, summer or winter, subtropical or subpolar, temperatures underground would be in the neighborhood of 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The vast amounts of energy now expended in warming our surface surroundings when they are too cold or cooling them when they're too warm can be saved. The damage done by weather to humanity and its structures would be gone. Even earthquakes would be only about 1/5 as damaging beneath the surface. Second, local time would no longer be important. The passage of the sun, the tyranny of day and night coming at different times in different places can be avoided. Underground, where there is no externally produced day, the alteration of work, play, and sleep can be adjusted to suit ourselves. The whole world could be one 8-hour shift, or beyond 8-hour shifts, is starting and ending on the same stroke everywhere, at least as far as business and community endeavors are concerned. This could be important in a freely mobile world. Air transportation over long distances, east and west, would no longer entail jet lag. If we leave New York at noon and take 12 hours to get to Tokyo, it will be midnight there, and midnight for our own biological clock, too. Third, the ecological balance of the Earth would be better off. To a certain extent, of course, humankind encumbers the Earth. It is not only our enormous numbers that take up room, it is also the structures we build to house ourselves and our machines to make possible our transportation, communication, and recreation. And it doesn't say anything about food, but even the production of food. All these things disturb the wild, depriving many species of plants and animals of their habitat, their natural habitat. And sometimes, as a side consequence, favouring a few others, such as rats and roaches. The more of ourselves and our works we place underground below the realm of borrowing life, the more room there will be on the planet for other forms of life. Fourth, nature would be closer. It might seem that to withdraw underground is to withdraw from the natural world, but would that be so? Would the withdrawal be so much more complete than it is now, when so many people work in city buildings that are often windowless and artificially air-conditioned? Even when there are windows, what does the eye behold in some places but other buildings? One might argue that there is a psychological difference. However divorced present-day cities may be from nature, we are in view of the sun and the sky by looking out the window or stepping out the door. Isn't that right? But look at it this way. To get away from the city now, to reach real tracts of greenery and of reasonably unspoiled nature, a New Yorker, a Londoner, a Tokyoite must travel horizontally for miles and hours through heavy traffic, first across city pavements and then across suburban sprawls. If we were living beneath, if we had an underworld culture, the countryside would be right there, a few hundred yards above the upper level of the cities, wherever you were within them. The world of nature would be an elevator ride, and the dwellers beneath would be more greenery, would see more greenery, under ecologically healthier conditions than dwellers of the surface cities do today. And remember, as one more point, that in an underground world of perpetually equable weather, walking would be so much more pleasant. There would be less reason to use transportation facilities for short hauls, thus conserving energy and increasing bodily fitness.
Now, this is what Asimov thought, quite a while ago, 1989, in fact. And he's not alone. And the stories of Hollow Earth, inner Earth civilizations, etc., have been with us for, forever, really. And in fact, a lot of the ancients, well, not just the ancients, but people specifically in North America, there was, I can't remember which tribe it was, and I don't want to lie here, but it was a tribe in North America that says we came out from under the ground after the Hopi, after the last catastrophe.
The ant people took them beneath the ground.
Yeah, and here we are. It's a boom. And the other stories that talk about inner Earth civilization, they're anecdotal evidence. It's not really evidence, but it's anecdotal stories that talk about excursions into the Earth. There's one from 1589, I think, in Germany, Bamberg. I read up on it recently, which examined a massive cave complex, and they found this really strange, I guess, not what we would call modern technology under the earth, that seemed to them quite miraculous and magical at the time. But these are just, and this was recorded in the town's archives and the town's books, etc., So that there are a lot of stories that link a civilization to us. They talk about, the giants under the mountain as well. The king of the mountain, and each. I don't know if you know this giant called 𝐫𝐞𝐯𝐨𝐥𝐿 in German folklore, and he was meant to be under the mountains. And there's this in America as well. These mountains. There's Shasta, Mount Shasta, which is a phenomenally mysterious mountain. It's meant to have very strange things happening as well. And these entrances to the underground world are underwater. They're in mountains. They're in woodlands. Parks, national parks. Maybe that's where people are disappearing into. Maybe they're falling into interdimensional bubbles and traps. See, the thing is this: once we accept that these phenomena are real, life becomes a lot easier to bear. And by that I mean it's a lot easier to understand that there are a lot of things that don't make any sense on the face of it. But if you assume that there's a more highly or more advanced technology at play, maybe even technology that would seem like magic to us, right? And believe me, we don't understand the world. We really don't understand the universe. We don't understand reality because none of our theories make any sense combined. In and of themselves, they're fine, but as soon as you start testing them, or you try to combine them, like quantum physics and the theory of relativity, it just all falls apart, right? So we don't have a good handle on reality. We don't have a good understanding of what actually is going on. So I think it is highly likely that we're cohabiting this planet with others, and more advanced than ourselves, certainly. And do some people know about this? I'm convinced they do. I'm convinced they do. And are these the people that are keeping us here? The people that are ultimately the great parasites? I'm of two minds. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's possible. Certainly, some of the parasites would have been, one of these long-lived creatures that have been with us for a very, very long time and doing here whatever they need to do, for their own purposes without us ever understanding why, potentially. But here we are. And this is really where it all is. This is why I guess people say God is ineffable. I can say we can say the same thing here. And there's a little story coming up later in the show, not today, but certainly in the next few weeks, around ants. But think of us as these ants. Think of us as ants for a second. We're looking up at human beings, for argument's sake, and it's only really one ant that can see us, which is a jumping jack, fairly large ant. It can track human movement. All other ants are completely oblivious to our existence. But let's say ants became aware of our existence. Let's say we're a jumping jack. It would still be completely impossible for us to sit down with the jumping jack and converse. Now, I don't think the gulf between the jumping jack and us is bigger than the gulf between us and these long-lived potential inner earthers. I think the gulf between the inner earthers and us is much smaller.
I just want to make a point here.
Please.
That ants have seen us come. They've seen us rise to where we are, and if we left, they'd still be here. Right? I sat down outside because I've got the 12 chickens, right? And I call them cluckers, for want of a better word. And they lay eggs for us. Now, one of them loves to come around and clucker and talk to me while I'm outside doing things. But I'm not having a meaningful conversation with the chicken. I have no idea what it's talking about. And to be honest, it doesn't concern me at all. And I don't feel as though I've walked away learning something. Their curiosity is outstanding, but once again, I'm just there. The things I'm doing they have no comprehension of why I'm doing what I'm doing. It makes no sense. It's not food foraging, and therefore they don't know.
Correct. And they could never glean we are in a similar position, Dave. I mean, we're looking at the platform at the Jupiter Temple at Baalbek. We're looking at the perfect spheres that litter the South American jungles. We're looking at these massive monuments, if you will, right? And it includes the platforms the pyramids were built on and other things, even the Sphinx. And we think, oh, it's religious, it's this, it's that, it's these are tombs for kings and such. Well, in the pyramids, I'm talking about the Great Pyramids here. We never found a single mummy. Never mind any inscriptions, right? The only inscriptions we found inside were clear forgeries because they're misspelled. So that theory in my mind goes right out the window. And you look at other, monuments in South America. You look at these massive rocks that they're perfectly fit together. You look at Puma Punku. Okay, you look at some of the Pacific Island ruins, not just the Easter Island, but others, right? And you see a common thread here. You see a civilization that built this. How long ago, we don't know, because it's rocks. You can't date rocks. That's the problem. So what we do is, what we do, Dave? We date these sites by organic material we find nearby. That's what we do. Because that's all we can do.
The dirt around the bottom of it. Yeah, that's right.
But see, that's not really telling us much at all, because it's not comprehensive and could be completely wrong as well. So So the problem that we have here is we just don't know, and we don't know how old these things are. Some of the things in South America, they have been dated by star maps to 20,000 years ago. The Sphinx, right, which arguably, okay, again, happy for anyone to have the argument with me, had its head recarved because the head is in complete disproportion to the body.
Yeah.
Because I believe it was the head of a lion at one point.
Agreed.
And so they've sort of rotated back the stars in the sky to a time which was about 14,000 years ago, when that lion, that massive Sphinx, was actually facing due, looking at
Leo.
the constellation of Leo.
That's
right? But you have to go back 14,000 years for that to have happened. And again, the cities, or some of the cities in South America, are even older if you date them by their star alignments. Okay, much older.
However, Mackie, just like Easter Island, just like the Sphinx, and the pyramids for that matter, the actual reason why they were built or constructed or carved, and their alignments and their arrangements are also beyond what we understand.
We don't know.
We don't know. The motive for building them is unknown. Yeah. So, like the chicken in my example, going clunk 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 clunk, wandering around the giants or whoever it was that was building this, if they had a different language, we'd just be watching in awe. They're doing something, but it's not food gathering.
No.
What are they doing that for? I don't know. And even today, we have no clue why they were built. Makes no sense to anybody.
But it doesn't. Look at a city like Machu Picchu, for example, which is high in the Andes. Like it's so high that
can't see it from the valley.
Well, you can't. No, you can't see it from anywhere. And in fact, anyone that's born, like a woman that's born on sea level or thereabouts, several hundred meters up and down, couldn't give birth there. Mm-hmm. A woman that hasn't been born at that altitude could not give birth there. The air is simply too thin. Mm-hmm. But yet there it is. It's beautifully. It's actually really beautifully built. It's picturesque. I mean, if it was a resort, you would go there. Get a helicopter and it's beautiful.
Oh, helicopter for sure.
It's nobody. It's breathtaking. The Nazca lines. Nobody knows what the Nazca lines are for. They're religious in nature. So people,
sure they are. Yeah. Do you know whole mountaintop was carved away?
Yeah, I know.
And there's no evidence of where it went, by the way.
No. That's another thing.
Yeah.
See, there are all these mysterious things which make, again, no sense to us whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I mean, why would you ever use these massive blocks of stone to do anything? The Romans, right, which we know very well, okay, and you look at that. I mean, they built some monumental structures. They really did, but they weren't stupid. They were really good engineers, and they used concrete. They poured. They didn't bother with massive stones. That's not their thing. They didn't do that. Okay. In fact, they had a hard time moving these massive stones from Egypt to Rome.
I love that thing, that plinth thing. We'll take that. We'll take that, and we'll drag it around Europe until we give up.
Which was, by the way, about the same time as the Temple of Jupiter was meant to have been built.
That's right.
So if the Romans had this expertise of moving these massive, 1,000-ton stones, then they would have had no trouble at all moving that obelisk, which was not even 1,000 tons. Okay, but they did. They had massive issues. So we know the Romans did not build the platform of the Jupiter temple. We know this for a fact. Right? They built a temple on top of it, which was quite impressive. Don't get me wrong, but the platform, which was even more impressive, was not built by the Romans. You can look at the stones themselves and the weathering they were exposed to. Same with the Sphinx, and the Heracleion, and other the Temple of Abydos as well, and other ancient sites where it doesn't make any sense. The Valley of the Kings, you know why it's called the Valley of the Kings? Because that's where the pharaohs were buried, all of them, in the Valley of the Kings. That's where the tombs were.
Did you know, Mackie, that in the Valley of the Kings, if you have a look at any documentary footage, you'll see that the same water erosion is around the edges of the Valley of the Kings as is found around the Sphinx. The same water erosion. Dating both to around about the same period. And the actual King's List that I mentioned a little earlier lines up at the big, like the end. The Egyptian King's List has an overlap of a couple of kings, that the Sumerians actually went way back further than the Egyptian King List.
Correct. That's correct.
And
of course,
when was that? When, because we're only estimating now, and people go, oh no, that's orbits of the moon, or it's some other date. It can't be humans, because when we put the human scale to it, you go, oh, you can't live 400 years or 4,000 years or 41,000 years. You can't live that long. Someone did. They documented it.
And we really have to take the hat that we're wearing, which is the mayfly, off and look at life. And we discussed this as part of the hypothesis as well. There is no good reason why we die. Mm-hmm. There isn't. Sorry, that's not entirely true. There's a very good reason we die.
Yeah, there is.
We've got a built-in kill switch. It's called aging. There's certain things our body stops producing at a certain age. And when that happens, and we talked about telomeres and telomerase, until the cows come home, it's a thing. In fact, telomerase therapy is something that's seriously being explored. To lengthen, potentially lengthen, like restore as well as protect the telomeres, right? Which are the end strands of your DNA. Right? Think of it as a checksum or copying.
Don't forget, there was
protection.
A Nobel Prize for medicine. In 2009, wasn't it, Mickey? And they split off into TA65. Just check that out.
Yeah. So this is real stuff here, okay? And so we were built, and I have to say this, we were made with a limited lifespan in mind. I mean, the stories abound. The people see, this is the funny thing. The ones that were there, let's say before us, or simultaneously to us, or whatever, that had a hand in our evolution, accelerated evolution, if you want to call it that, they were divided amongst themselves. It wasn't a uniform or heterogeneous kind of decision-making process, because some of them, right, wanted to help us. Others did not, and others didn't really care. The story of Prometheus, right? Even the story of Gilgamesh, or even before that, the epic of I've got it here actually.
Text?
No. Yeah, the Vedic text as well, but I'm thinking specifically of a what's the word? Sumerian uniform text. Atras. The epic of, I think it's the epic of Atras, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. It's part of the text. We'll get to it, but ultimately, it is really important to understand that this is not a group of beings that are united in their purpose. Okay, I mean the revolt of 𝐫𝐞𝐯𝐨𝐥𝐿 against the Anunnaki.
Yeah.
Was probably the first labor dispute that we know about, right? And furthermore, the Prometheus as well as others tried to help us, bring us knowledge. I mean, you can love him or hate him, but Lucifer, right, the bearer of light. Lucifer means bearer of light. Prometheus, who also brought us light, and I believe it is simply symbolism for knowledge. That's my opinion. They were punished. So Prometheus, for giving us light or knowledge, in my mind, he was chained to a rock and have a vulture come, or an eagle, whatever it was, and eat his liver every day. So vulture comes, eats his liver, the liver grows back overnight, vulture comes again the next day, etc. And Lucifer, for his troubles, because what he did is give us knowledge. Oh, Mercury, no, what? What are you talking about? So let's be very clear here, right? Garden of Eden story, two trees. One tree of knowledge, right? Don't eat from that, bad people, don't eat from it. Other tree of life. So people then, Adam and Eve, in our story, eat from the tree of knowledge. Oh, that's bad, says God. Now we have to kick Adam and Eve out. Why? Because if they eat from the tree of knowledge, right? And now, after they've done that and eat from the tree of life, they will become like us. They will become like us, like God. So we have knowledge. That's awesome, right? And now, eternal life. No, we can't have that. Right, so they're kicked out of the Garden of Eden now, and that story repeats elsewhere, right? And this knowledge that Prometheus, the fire that he stole from the gods and gave to us, and led then to his downfall and torture. Same with Lucifer. He gave us knowledge, right? Boom, downfall, the fallen angel. Boom, and this is really the thing here. You need to understand what you're reading, and you need to decipher it for yourselves. Okay, you need to understand the story has been told from the view of the winner. Okay, the people that have given us the story are the people that won the battle. So Prometheus, in my mind, the same person that Lucifer was, or the bearer of light, they were punished for their efforts to help us, right? Because we were created as a slave worker race. That's pretty much it, right? And it's horrible, and it's obviously you don't like to hear that, but ultimately that's not all there is to us, because we also have DNA from, like, that was clearly given to us from them. So the stories all go back to, we were created from the earth, etc., which is true. But if you go back to the oldest text, what it says is one of the gods sacrificed himself, and his genetic material was used to create us together with material that was of the earth. That was mixed together, right?
Just Prometheus, Meki. They actually visualized it in the movie.
Yeah. Yes. Correct. But that's exactly what it said happened.
Yeah.
It's exactly what they said in these thousands and thousands of years old texts. What happened?
That's right.
So that's where we are. This is the reality of it. So it is really, everything is coming together. And if that is true, all of this, then of course there would be strange places on the earth that we don't understand. Because civilizations have existed on the surface too, that predate us by hundreds of thousands of years. We have found physical evidence in layers of rock where there shouldn't be any. It's been completely disregarded by mainstream science because it can't be true, Meki. It can't be true because it doesn't make any sense, Meki.
Yeah, so when you say disregarded, it's just put into a pile of, it doesn't fit the narrative. That's all it does. That's all they do with it. They just put it into a big pile, and the pile just keeps getting bigger. Because their narrative is indeed shrinking, that we have only been here for 14,000 years or some ridiculous thing, right? It's honestly, it's probably the stupidest thing. What they should have said, rather, was, look, we're looking into it. It's probably a lot longer, but currently all we have to show is this, this, and this, and this.
Yeah,
That's it.
But there are these anomalous pieces of evidence which we just don't know what to do with. But here they are. Look, they are.
That's right.
Future scientists, look, we found this stuff.
If anyone can work the hell of this stuff, will that help us, right? But they don't. They just go, no, it doesn't exist. Just leave it at nah. Well, the person didn't go to university, Mackie, when they found it, right?
Well, that's a big problem. So this really bothers me. It's
like, Mackie, I want to expand on that. So it's like stumbling upon a dead body, and you call the police, and they go, "Oh, what? You think you're a coroner?" And you go, "Well, no. I mean, they're clearly dead, right? I'm just ringing. I'm walking down the path, and there's a dead body here. Oh, wait, what? You can't. What? Are you educated in when someone's dead?" Well, no, but well, then it doesn't exist. Right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of exposure that we've got to the hardcore science lockstep agreement procedures. This is exactly what it looks like.
It's actually more sinister than that, even, right? So you're right. So I mean, there's a lot of self-censorship and self-interest, etc., right?
Yeah.
But it is clear to me that there is another guiding force, if you will, that lets us look in certain areas and not in others, and sometimes to the point of actually getting rid of the researchers or the research altogether that is not going in the right direction, right? It just disappears. I mean, look at it. I mean, this very simply put, in the 1950s, anti-gravity, right? Before the turn of the century, Nikola Tesla.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, honestly, I mean, of course, people now are becoming more aware of his name again. But for like almost 100 years, Nikola Tesla was like a footnote, right, in the science books. Nobody really remembered, unless you're like a science geek, and you really like, you like your stuff and understand how it all hangs together. You wouldn't have known about Nikola Tesla. You just wouldn't. It's only recently, or well, relatively recently, that he's becoming more prominent and people are understanding his contribution to science overall. But we still don't have access to all of his research. Right?
Remember the FBI went in and raided his place.
Yeah. Yes. then Hitler's bodyguard, Otto Skorzeny, allegedly confessed to having killed him. Right? So he was assassinated. Right? So is that true or not? I don't know. But it certainly is certainly something where it's just astounding that we have been so blind. I mean, for the longest time, most of us lived in ignorance because we weren't educated. People couldn't read, etc., etc. Only the few, and I mean the elite, now not the parasites, but only the elite could really be educated, right? The rich, the human beings that were rich and had influence and power and etc., etc., and were lucky enough, to be born into that kind of environment. The vast majority of us, illiterate, for the most part, right? For vast tracts of our society and our history. Is that the music?
Holy moly,
fast. Wow. Okay, next week, Hollow Earth Theory, from ancient civilizations to modern researchers and explorers.
This will be part 5 in our series. Hey, coming up next is 𝐶𝐵 After Hours, so do take part, have a listen, call in if you want. And we're going to see you next week for another Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mackie. And in the meantime, take care and avoid the virus. And the floods. And the fires.